Hello everyone, my name is Travis Tennell. I'm the supervisor of the physical training section at the Department of Criminal Justice Training. We've recently changed our handcuffing technique, and I want to go through and explain why we do what we do on this handcuffing technique, some of the teaching points, if you will. As we get started, we advise recruits and in-service personnel to, if you're going to make an arrest, most of the time you will tell them they are under arrest prior to making your approach. You see the distance at which I'm standing from Mr. Northern, and we want to maintain our reactionary gap. We know that most police officers are killed while making an arrest, so we want to respect that reactionary gap. We may want to even increase it. The reactionary gap is a minimum distance of 6 feet, but when we're making an arrest, depending on what kind of arrest it is, what the charge is going to be, we may want to increase that distance by taking a step back, increasing it to 8 or 9 feet. The reason we do this is so that we can gauge their response to being under arrest, being told they're under arrest. If they're going to be non-compliant, I would like to know that at distance versus getting that upon first touch, which is where you get most of your non-compliance. For us, we feel like it's safer. Is it 100%? No, we don't do it 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, this is how we will affect an arrest. So we start out by telling him he's under arrest, and then we're going to put him in the position of arrest. Sir, you're under arrest at this time. I want you to put your hands out to the side, parallel to the ground, palms facing me. I want you to turn around till I tell you to stop. Stop. Put your feet together. The reason we ask him to put his hands out to the side before he turns around is because we want to make sure we see the hands at all times. We know the hands are what's going to kill us, and so we want to see those hands in plain view at all times. Bring your hands, put them in the small of your back of your hands together. Interlace your fingers. Do not move. Do you understand? Yes. A couple of things here. We put their feet together so we can take their base away from them. We know that if you're going to resist, if you're going to fight, you need a good base. Putting the feet together eliminates that base. Putting their hands in the small of their back and interlacing their fingers is going to set up the handcuffing technique. At this point, if they cannot put their hands together, if they can't go knuckle to knuckle, and if they can't interlace their fingers, if they're so broad or inflexible, then hopefully we'll see that at this distance, and we can go ahead and put two sets of cuffs together, and so that we can get those cuffs on without too much of an issue with our suspect. We don't want to cause them too much discomfort, or any discomfort really, because if we do, then that could lead to some non-compliant behavior. We could cause them to become non-compliant, and we don't want to do that. We want to put the handcuffs on safely and effectively. And then the next thing is we tell them, do not move, do you understand? The reason we do that is that if they do anything other than what we've said from this point on, then we take that as non-compliance, because we've asked them if they understood. We told them, do not move, do you understand? And so if they move at any point, then that tells us that that could possibly be them being non-compliant, or them deciding they're going to run towards us, run away from us, whatever the case may be. You'll see here that I've brought the handcuffs up to eye level. These are hinge cuffs. You can do this handcuffing technique with chain or hinged. But what we don't want you to do is look down at your handcuffs. Even at 8 feet, 9 feet, that guy can cover that distance fairly quickly. He's probably, unless you cover the sound of your handcuffs coming out with some kind of voice commands or some other discussion to mask you getting your cuffs out, they're going to know the handcuffs are coming out. That could be their cue to attack. If you have your head down, especially if you're wearing a hat, you're going to be blind to their movement. So we advocate bringing the handcuffs up to eye level so that you can see that both single bars are facing towards the front. Even with a chain, you want to make sure, especially with a chain with hinged, when they come out, they're obviously going to be facing the same way. With a chain cuff, you want to make sure that you have both of those single bars facing towards the front. Now we're ready to make our approach. Once we make our approach, we're going to come in. You see my foot down here, and it's right at the back of Mr. Northern's feet. That does two things for me. If he tries to move, if he tries to spread his feet to resist or whatever the case may be, I should be able to feel that through my foot without looking at it. The second thing is as I pull his hands back and down away from his body, then sometimes if we pull too hard, then we can actually pull them off balance, and our foot can serve as a balance point for them. It could give them a little bit of something to stand against to maintain their balance. You'll notice that I've grabbed the fingers, and I've grabbed as many as I could comfortably grab. I'm not grabbing all the fingers, I'm just grabbing some of the fingers. And with them being interlaced, when I grab them, it causes somewhat of a handcuff motion for him. It makes him difficult to separate his hands from that position. It's not impossible to separate your hands from that position, but it's more difficult. So don't think that you have complete control of the subject at this point. You have control, but you don't have complete control. Now, as we move forward, I'm going to pull the hands back and down, and I'm going to rotate the cuffs to a horizontal position. They were in a vertical position, if you remember, when I brought them up to eye level. And now I'm going to rotate them over to horizontal to set up the handcuff. So you saw very quickly, I brought the handcuff over horizontal and I applied the first cuff. You just want to line that cuff up with the smallest part of the wrist and push it down. It takes a little effort to put the handcuff on. You can't dilly-dally around with it and powder puff it. You've got to put the cuff on. After you get the first cuff on, then you line up the second one and you apply it. Just that simple. Now with hinge cuffs, once you come over, if you can determine that both wrists line up with the handcuff, if that handcuff is not applied, if I'm still hovering over the top of his wrist, but I can see that they line up with his wrist, then I can use one motion, push down one time, just push the center of the cuff down and apply both handcuffs at the same time. That's the luxury of hinge cuffs. It's not a whole lot faster, but it is faster. So it's just something that we advise recruits and other in-service personnel that come through. If you have hinged, then that's just a luxury that you have. It may not work every time. I used it in the field throughout my career, and the vast majority of people I handcuffed, I could put them on with one motion. Just something to think about. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition from my handcuff to my escort position. This is the escort position. I have my wrist lock here. I'm putting pressure on the knuckles of his hand. They're in the palm of my hand, and I'm using that to put pressure on his wrist. And you'll see up here on his elbow, I have a C-clamp right above the elbow. And so my thumb, there's actually a nerve right above the elbow, and my thumb is on that nerve. So if he starts wiggling around with me, then all I have to do is, it's kind of a double push. So I'm going to push this way on the wrist, and I'm going to push the elbow back down towards the wrist, and the point that they meet is right there, causes pain, and hopefully you'll get compliance with that pain. Too much and you're going to have a wild animal on your hand, too little and it won't be effective. You're going to have to find that happy medium. Obviously alcohol, drugs, mental illness, things like that, those are variables that you just have to realize that this may not be effective. They may not feel the pain as you do that. You also notice one other thing down here is my foot. My left foot, I'm a right-handed officer. I have moved to the left side of the suspect, and I have placed my left foot against his left heel. That, once again, kind of grounds him, keeps him from moving his feet, and lets me know, telegraphs his movement if he's going to do it. And then I'm ready to transition from this point to double locking the handcuffs, checking tension and double locking. The first thing I'm going to do, though, you'll see, is I'm going to sweep this pancake area. The pancake area is the small of the back where any weapons could be held. And we know most bad guys carry their weapons around their waists, and obviously there's their pancake area, which is the small of the back, is a part of that. So we want to make sure before we leave the hands in the small of the back that we've cleared that area of weapons. Now you'll notice I'm checking tension. I'm going to go back here real quick. I think I'm going to go back. You'll notice right here, my index finger is, I'm just putting the very tip of my finger in between the cuff and the suspect's wrist. It's just very quick. Just if I can get the tip of my finger in there, that should be enough space for the suspect to be able to wear these handcuffs comfortably, as comfortable as they're going to be, put it that way. Once I do that, once I check tension, now I'm ready to double lock the cuff. You'll see me grab my handcuff key. I'll come in and double lock the handcuff. What you'll notice next is I'm going to store my key away, and then I'm going to swim over to the other side. This is the swim over. I want to maintain control of the suspect at all times, so I don't let go of the left hand before I have control of the right hand, and so we call that swimming over. You'll come over the top, you'll make an X at your wrist, and then you're going to transition to the other side. You'll notice that now my right foot is against Mr. Northern's right foot, and now my escort position, I still have his knuckles in the palm of my hand. You'll still see my thumb on that nerve at the elbow. We're just on the other side, ready to move on. Check tension again. You can already see my finger moving in to check tension. You heard that click. I gave him just a little bit because it was a little loose. Double lock, put my handcuff key. I'm going to swim back over. That concludes the handcuffing technique. Now at this point, obviously we're going to search our suspect before we put him in the car. That's kind of the point of no return. We want to make sure we apply handcuffs, we check tension, double lock, and we search when it's tactically safe to do so. The circumstance will dictate when that is. That's your call, your discretion, but please search them before you put them in the back of your car.